Good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to the second of our budget information sessions this week here at the SCRD. Again, our focus of tonight's session is the SCRD budget. My name is Aidan Buckley and I work as Manager of Communications and Engagement at the Sunshine Coast Regional District. I want to start by acknowledging that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located on the land of the Sechelt and Squamish First Nations. So tonight we have about a 15-minute presentation all about this year's budget and lots of time for questions. So on that, there's three ways to ask a question on our virtual session. And down the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a chat icon there, so you can put your question in there. There's also Q&A, so you can also place in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand if you're attending, and I can promote you into the meeting, and you can go ahead and you can ask the question yourself. And if possible, it'd be great if you could use the Q&A function as much as possible. If you're not going to raise your hand, just allows us to keep track of the questions a little bit easier. So I'm joined tonight by our Chief Financial Officer, Tina Perot, and Tina's going to share a presentation here shortly. And while Tina's getting that ready, just to remind you that, if you have a question that's maybe a little bit more on the technical side, we may not be able to answer tonight, but we'll be sure to put an email into the chat, so you can go ahead and you can you can send it through an email, and we'll ensure that either myself, Tina, or one of our staff will get back to you. So Tina, whenever you're ready there, feel free to take it away.
Okay, everybody can see that all right?
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Tina.
All right, fantastic. So thank you for joining us this evening. So the purpose of our presentation today is to provide you with an update of the round one budget deliberations and provide information on the preliminary utility rates and taxation, as well as some of the projects that are being proposed for 2024. And also to provide an opportunity for folks to ask questions about the budget process. So our board adopted its new strategic plan at the end of last year, and the board identified 2 service delivery focus areas for 2023 and 2027 for their new term, which include water stewardship and solid waste solutions. In addition to the 2 focus area, the board also identified 4 key lenses for basing its framework of decision-making. The lenses are service delivery excellence, climate resilience and environment, social equity and reconciliation, and governance excellence. So the SCRD has many projects that are multi-year in nature, and it has made considerable progress on several of them. And we just wanted to highlight a few for people today. And that includes new water supply that was commissioned last year for the Church Road well, the introduction of Fire Smart program, which is 100% grant funded. We also were successful in launching our new corporate website to better serve residents. We also completed site improvements for the Sechelt landfill, and there are multi-million-dollar investments being committed to our community recreation facilities. The SCRD was also successful in receiving well over $10 million worth of grants, both federal and provincially. And so that offsets burden to ratepayers and taxpayers. So some of the ones we just wanted to highlight include $6 million towards the final phase of the water metering program for the District of Sechelt, which was announced in March of last year. And if folks remember, we anticipated that we would have to debt fund that project, so that was great news. We also have over $750,000 for various wastewater upgrades, but notably we received notification late last year for the Langdale wastewater upgrade of $750,000. And we also received $2.3 million from the Growing Communities funds from the province to help on burdens of growth to our community. So it was very timely. So from budget timelines, the Regional District Board was also looking for some efficiencies on how to streamline our budget process. So there were no pre-budget deliberations in the fall of this year. So we headed right into our round one budget meetings that happened December 4th, 5th, and 6th of last month. We are just conducting our community presentations to our member municipalities. We presented to the District of Sechelt, to the Sechelt First Nations this morning, and holding 2 community presentations online this week. Our round 2 budget deliberations are scheduled for February the 5th, and we are scheduled to adopt our budget bylaw on February the 22nd. Regional districts are required to finalize their budget process before March 31st of each year. So what's impacting this year's budget? So we do still have a very aggressive work plan proposed. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, there's consideration that many of our projects, especially the ones capital in nature, are multi-year, and we expect that to be there. So there are several of those on the docket. And we also had over 100 new initiatives being considered for 2024. So part of the board's strategic priority was some of the key focuses for proposals this year, which includes over $23.5 million worth of new water and solid waste initiatives being presented for consideration. And of course, there is going to be some need for temporary resources for some of those projects. For instance, our development application process improvements has some staffing considerations to ensure that we initiate things like that, including our OCP reviews. And we also have service cost implications that many businesses and entities and local governments throughout BC and Canada are experiencing, which include things like labor costs, increasing materials and transport, our operational costs, some areas that we're seeing some increases, inclusive insurance, fuel, and maintenance. We're also seeing a considerable amount of asset renewal requirements, and that's because local governments and many public entities now are focusing more on asset renewal and long-range planning for assets. And so we're dealing a lot in reactionary mode, where we're dealing with delayed or overdue maintenance. So that's having some cost impact to our organization. So some of the new initiatives that are being presented this year include solid waste, and staff have identified an option to extend the life of the landfill potentially until 2030. This project will involve relocating the contact water pond up on the site, which manages stormwater that comes into contact with solid waste. And anyone following solid waste or the Sechelt landfill knows that there was an expected ended lifespan for our landfill around 2025, 2026. So this is a considerable win for us if we can achieve this. BC Transit service expansion is also something that the community has been engaged with and has been requesting additional frequency, and that has been a commitment from the board, and we should see some new service added towards the end of 2024. And of course, we have commitment from BC Transit as well, along with funding from them. We also have Sechelt Aquatic Center, many projects going on for many of our rec facilities, because we have probably about 50 capital projects going on at all those 4 facilities. And so one in particular is we'll see the completion of the sprinkler system repairs at the Sechelt Aquatics. And staff have also proposed conducting a recreation needs assessment, which will help inform the future of recreation services on the Sunshine Coast. It's important to note that we took on 2 older facilities, and our 2 newer facilities are almost 20 years old. So for water, we have some new big ticket items this year. They're just related to maintenance of the system. So we need to upgrade pumps at the treatment plant as well as the HVAC system. And we have additional funding to relocate exposed water mains, which cross Chapman Creek. Of course, we'll continue with groundwater exploration through this year, and the water metering project is well underway. So we have some presentations coming to our committees coming up on those water projects as well. People are interested. So another point we wanted to make is that the regional district, along with member municipalities, contribute to many of our community partners. And so we've listed just a few here, and there's several dozen. And so they include funding towards our libraries, our museums, as well as our search and rescue and many economic development and community service programs to support youth, for example. So it equates to over $2 million worth of funding that we provide to these groups that provide important programs and services that people really benefit from. The regional district is anticipating, and this is just after our round one budget, and there's still several decisions still left to be made, over a $61 million operating budget for 2024. And anyone who has been following the regional district knows that this is well over doubling our budget since 2018. We're also having a very aggressive capital plan. So again, we have some very large decisions coming forward, and we're estimating over probably a $50 million budget for capital for 2024. And like I mentioned, many of these are multi-year projects. For instance, one project that is being considered is the Langdale Well exploration. And this particular project, again, there's a presentation coming tomorrow on that item. And that's estimated at over $23 million. So more to come on that one, but all to say that we have a very large capital budget being considered. Another thing that we received after our round one budget deliberations was the change in assessed values for the Sunshine Coast. And it was the first year that, and many, that we actually saw a slight change in assessed values. However, we saw increases due to growth of a little over 1% for 2023. And so how that impacts the region is really how costs are apportioned amongst the services of the regional district. So one of the other things we wanted to provide folks was, what does preliminary taxation look like for each area? And so we have each area presented here. So for Area A, preliminary taxation, and this is really understanding that this is an aggregate. It depends on what services you provide or what local service areas you provide. And for Area A, we're looking at almost a $13 increase for taxation over each 100,000. And I think it's important to note that this is just the regional district portion of the property tax. And we recognize that there's things like school tax or rural taxes, things like your road improvements or police. So that's not included in these figures. For Area B, we're going to be seeing a little over a $17 increase over the prior year for every $100 worth of assessed value. And again, these are just preliminary after round one. For Area D, we'll see about a $16.50 average over the prior year. And for Area E, Elphinstone, we'll see almost a $20 increase over the prior year. For West Howe Sound, and we acknowledge that we also have some island residents here, so they'll see some variation to this. And of course, we have all this information on our website, or we'll have this on our website closer to round two, just more detailed information on your taxation. So we're just seeing just under $15 for West Howe Sound, and about $7.66 for the Sechelt Nation Government District. Just under $12 for the town of Gibsons. And for the District of Sechelt, we're just seeing just under $9 per 100,000 of assessed value of the home. And that's, again, just for the regional district portion. The SCRD also approved its water rate bylaws at the end of December. And so the proposed, or the rates for 2024, the average rate player for regional water will see just over $121 combined impact. And for North and South Pender, North is just a little over 100 and 165 for South Pender. It's important to note that the user rate you will receive in a separate utility fee or utility bill, and the parcel tax will be put onto your property tax notice. We also approved our wastewater services. The regional district formally operates about 15 wastewater services throughout. So these are local service areas. And again, these will be showing up on your utility fees through the bill that comes in. And so some areas did not see any increases, and some saw some increases on the frontage or the side that is for our capital renewal plans. Our community recreation and Pender Harbor Rec is not anticipated to see anything there. That might just see a slight decrease. And again, our garbage and food waste for our refuse collection for areas B, D, E, and F, they will not see an increase in their rates because they were kept the same as 2023. So what's next? Well, like I said, we are holding our information sessions, and we have our last session to our town of Gibsons on February the 6th. And on round 2, February 5th, those are open and public meetings, so people are welcome to attend those sessions. And again, adopting our final budget bylaw on February the 22nd. So with that, we will open it up to questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Appreciate it. And just to follow on from Tina, tomorrow, there's, I guess, two reports coming forward. One at the SUD's Committee of the Whole, which is around a project update for future long-term solid waste disposal options. So for those of you watching on YouTube, that's going to be on January 25th, just in case you're watching this a week or two down the line. And then at 1 p.m. at the board, there'll be a report brought forward about groundwater exploration as well. So two for sure to watch out for. So if you're just joining us, if you want to ask a question anytime, please feel free to do so. You can put it in the chat down the bottom of the screen, in the Q&A, or else you can also raise your hand as well, and I can promote you into the meeting to ask it. So we did have one question which came in ahead of time, and it's from Kim. I know Kim was hoping to join us. I'm going to put it into the chat so everyone else can see it. And Kim asks, I note in December 4th, round 1 budget presentation, priorities defined as must, should, could. How many of the 159 carry forward and 101 new initiatives proposed are must versus should versus could? And can you provide that breakdown to the public before round 2 if it's not already available?
So thank you for the question. I don't have the exact numbers. They are in the agenda. So in round 1, someone can actually do a count. I don't have the actual count. The carry forwards were not separated based on that because that would have been evaluated in prior criteria for the board. So we'd have to go back to those. So we don't really consider that in contemplation. What I will say, though, is that one of the proposals that was approved for this year and was to undertake a prioritization with the board along with sort of the next steps out of their strategic plan. So taking all of these projects and really understanding which are the key priorities and which ones will take highest precedent over the others. So that more to come on that. But again, this information will be available on our website. It'll be in our round 2 budget agenda. And so someone could do a count, but we can also get back to you and give you the actual numbers.
Thanks, Tina. So if anybody would like to ask a question, as I said, you can do so using the Q&A function or chat as well. Darlene has just put a question into the Q&A here. Thanks for joining us, Darlene. Darlene's asking, thanks for the presentation, no problem. Tina, can you please brief us on how the SURD are advising the board to prioritise, in particular, what to cut or reduce? We've heard all about the increases, but equally important is what you were advising to cut, given the tight economic conditions many residents face. If we can have any details that we can provide, and also are there kind of top big ticket items that the SURD is maybe suggesting be reduced or cut? I can read that one again, Tina, or if you got it all.
Well, I as far as staff goes, I mean, we take direction from the board. We definitely always look to efficiencies. So there are a few proposals that definitely propose using other funding sources. As far as service delivery cuts, again, that would be something that the board would need to direct staff to do. And at this point, I don't believe we have any direction to review service reductions for any particular service, but definitely we have been sent back to look at different ways to fund certain types of projects to ensure that we offset tax burdens. And like I said earlier, we're always looking and have been quite successful in receiving grants one area in particular, and I know this is an area of big interest and topic throughout the world, really, which is emergency preparedness. And that would be an area that has been very aggressive, and there's been lots of funding from the province in respect to our emergency preparedness on the Sunshine Coast and in the province in general. So there's been a lot of funding provided there, and that just really recognizes that we aren't having to ask taxpayers for some of those important equipment items or plans that we need to do here to become prepared for emergencies. So again, in round two, we have many projects that are coming forward for alternative funding sources and alternative funding strategies. So there's been several reports that are going to be presented there to use things like community works funds. So these are different types of granting programs to fund large infrastructure needs for the community.
Thanks, Tina. I hope that answers your question, Darlene. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat. We're not seeing any more questions, so maybe Tina, just to give people a minute or two just to type in a question if they have one. I'll maybe cover off something that we spoke about a little bit on Monday, and that was taxation comparisons between the SCRD and other municipalities or regional districts. I was hoping maybe you could elaborate just on, I guess, how difficult that is to do, obviously based off the services that are being offered, because we saw Soyuz in the news with quite a considerable increase. I believe it was the Soyuz. Yeah.
So we definitely, I think the regional district has made some really positive progress on its long-term planning or long-term financial planning as it relates to our service needs. There's still a long way to go. But I think other local governments are catching up to that. And so we are seeing some double-digit increases in many communities. And really, that's that deferred maintenance on capital infrastructure. And that's where a lot of our grant funding, it doesn't offer funding for operations. So many of these things are to build infrastructure or replace infrastructure, but it doesn't pay for the ongoing service delivery or renewal of those types of things. And many times it won't say pay for staffing related costs. So yes, City of Vancouver, Cathet Regional District just last week had a very large increase. And that's, again, some of those cost pressures I was talking about. Wage increases, et cetera, have really gone up. Many of our tenders that are coming in with double-digit increases. And anyone who understands local governments are not impacted by inflation or CPI-related items so much, maybe fuel, but we don't really buy a lot of clothing or groceries or those types of things that drive those costs. So our indices, such as commodities and construction costs, are seeing significant double-digit indices over what we were seeing in prior years. And so those are the cost pressures that we're feeling. And so we are also limited with some of our funding options. And so that does go on to the burden of the ratepayer. So those are some hard decisions that our elected officials and decision makers need to make. And of course, trying to do more with less is always top at hand.
Thanks, Tina, for that. We got a couple of questions that have come in. Anonymous attendee is asking about asset management system, and they're saying that years ago introduced an asset management system to plan. They're asking why do we have roof surprises, solid waste, and their words, water disasters, which I don't necessarily agree with, but yeah. So essentially, we introduced an asset management system to plan. Why do you have roof surprises, solid waste? And
I'm not sure what roofs. The only roofs I can think of is the planned replacement for our recreation facilities. And some of those were within range of the anticipated replacement costs. They were a little bit earlier, but upon consultation. So yes, those facilities required roof replacements. I don't think they were a surprise. Capital plans are meant to give an idea. And so when you come closer to those times, you do more detailed assessment, and that was the outcome of that. I'm not quite sure what were the other comments there.
Basically, just I think you've answered it there. Basically, I guess it was just saying kind of planning for certain assets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some things that do arise that we can't foresee. So out of emergencies, we've had a few incidents through either some of our rain events or weather events. Definitely increased heat has changed the way or how that's impacted some of our infrastructure. So those are new considerations that we're putting into our asset management or long range planning is how climate change is impacting our assets and the condition of them.
Mhm. Thank you, Tina. Darlene, you just sent in a note there just asking how to ask a question in person. So if you see down the bottom of your screen, you can hit raise hand, and as soon as you do that, I can promote you into the meeting. Um, so Kim, thanks for presentation, no problem. And yeah, board meeting tomorrow is online. Kim has a comment saying resources, both human and fiscal, are stressed. I think setting priorities is crucial and would very much appreciate seeing the ratings, I guess, for must, should, could for both carry forwards and new initiatives. So just a comment there. Darlene, I'm gonna click to allow you to talk, because you had sent me a message there just saying you're hoping to ask your question in person. So I'll just click that here and see if that works okay for you. So Darlene, if you unmute, you should be able to ask your question now.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Aidan. I was trying
worries.
to push the raise hand button, but it wasn't working. Anyway, I was just about to go on with another tool. Tina, thanks for your answer, but I'll be blunt. I'm not very satisfied with it. For me, a budget process in a time of quasi recession, when everything's going up, and we know that on the coast we've got a lot of aging infrastructure. We always hear about all the increases here, there, and everywhere, and the big things that need to be done in the coming years. That has to somehow be accompanied by some kind of cuts, right? Some areas in the budget need to be cut, and somebody needs to decide where. And in my view, SCRD managers have a duty to make suggestions to our elected directors, who then have a duty to vote on yes or no, we cut this or that. It's 3 years now I've been looking at the budget process, and I've seen all the details you put in front of the directors, and I've scratched my head at how can they ever decide, because they're not experts on all those things. So what I hear is I hear all the increases, but I don't hear the cuts, and I'm frustrated because I don't understand as a taxpayer how I can influence that process, because each side says, it's not my responsibility. So it's probably too late in this process, but I suppose I'm looking for an answer from you about why is it that the SCRD managers don't make recommendations to the board on areas to cut so that they can vote? And is there some legislation that bars you from doing that? And the second question is, how can I, as a taxpayer at this point in the process, make my voice heard, that saying, no, some areas need to be cut given all these increases?
Thank you, Darlene. Tina, just as you're about to answer, I see, I'm just going to add him into the conversation. I see our CEO, Dean McKinley's here as well. So I'm just going to bring Dean into the meeting as well, Darlene. So I don't know, Dean, or Tina, whoever wants to address that first, please feel free to go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me, Aidan.
Yeah, we got you, Dean. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, super. Tina, feel free to add after I'm done. And thank you for the question, Darlene. Essentially, as staff, it frankly wouldn't be appropriate for us without direction from our board, who actually provide us with the direction, to just suggest cuts. We have not been directed to propose cuts. We have not been asked by the public to cut any services of the many services we provide. So while we recognize that costs are going up and the costs of providing services continue to challenge us, and the costs of trying to address the infrastructure deficit we face is also challenging, we have not been asked to come forward with cut proposals. And what we're trying to do is provide our board with recommendations using the best of our ability as subject matter experts that help guide continuing our services and moving forward with our board's strategic priorities within the means that we have.
One of the things I might also add is staff are always providing options. And so options and considerations, so I'm going to use the transit expansion as an option. There are options presented to decision makers. And although they may not be cuts, but there are ways to propose initiatives that are always considered, and some of them are not going forward. And so we just outlined what the consequence of that is. But typically we are, staff are essentially bringing things forward based on either public desire or going forward related to maintenance of an existing service.
Do you have anything else on that, Darlene? And I'll just double check with Dean as well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Darlene. Yeah, go ahead. You're still in here, so feel free to chat anytime.
I have to say I'm a bit alarmed by that answer. In particular, that the board hasn't asked the SCRD staff to propose cuts, given all the increases and everything we hear about infrastructure. The last one being the water system fire flows. So, as a taxpayer, I guess my only option is to write to my director, which I'm not sure how effective that is, but it is a bit alarming to me that there's no noise in the SCRD area about we need to cut some areas because we have so many increases coming our way. So I just make that comment, and I will, talk to other residents and also my director about how we make that heard. Because of course, if you listen to everything the residents want, we all want everything. Yeah, I mean, you know how it works. So, I want my community center, I want this and that, and we all want our pet projects. So if you listen to all those voices, you're never going to hear us say cuts. So somebody needs to be informed and smart and say, this is how we need to prioritize. These are some of the things that we need to cut. And in my view, it's the SCRD managers and our board of elected directors somehow in combination with each other. So I'll just stop there as, my final comment. And thank you for giving me the space.
Thank you, Darlene. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Dean, I don't know if you had anything to add. If not, I'll put you back in the gallery here.
Other than to say, Darlene, thank you for your comments and your question. It is a challenge, and the costs of continuing existing service levels, especially the costs that escalated during COVID, and to some degree have stayed higher than they have before, and there's so many inflationary pressures. We are trying to propose many options to our board that sees us able to continue our service levels, recognizing the escalating costs involved.
Okay, thanks, Dean. And Darlene, just going to put you back into the gallery here. Kim, I know you've just been messaging me there. I'm going to bring you into the meeting here, Kim, and see if that will work for you to ask your question. I think that's what you're asking to do. Kim, if you want to unmute, you can go ahead and ask a question.
Hi.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, we can hear you perfect, Kim. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go
Hi,
ahead.
it's Kim Doherty, Half Moon Bay. Thank you, Tina, for your answers thus far. Just to clarify, one of my questions is, who is online now? Are board members online now? Because when I read the information about this session tonight, I thought it was our opportunity for the board to hear our concerns, and I'm not sure if they're hearing them.
We have board members who are available, who are online. I actually have one of them who's just after raising his hand, and I'll
Okay. And then my second question reiterates Darlene's question, which is how do we provide input to the board prior to round two? Her question about cuts is really important, and I agree with it. And my question about how we set priorities. So how do we give that feedback? Two questions. Board online now, some. I'd like to know who. And second is, how do we provide further public feedback to the board before round two?
Well, maybe I can jump in and maybe provide a response to that. So we do have a Let's Talk page on our online related to the budget. The sessions for the budget, so on February 5th, those are open in public meetings. And so if public have any questions, usually at some point in the meeting, the chair will open the floor up to public comments. Our elected officials' contact information, I think, Aidan, is it on our website?
Yeah, it's on their website, Kim.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another way to provide information. Not all the decisions, so the budget's not finalized until the budget adoption is completed. And so we have, through many iterations of the budget, because I've been here for several years, we have done significant, been directed to do significant cuts. So COVID was the last one where we trimmed out several $1 million out of our budgets. But again, the desire was to repatriate those services back to pre-COVID levels. So we've seen a considerable getting back to that level. So so emailing your directors, contacting them directly and having your voice heard, that's part of today's session. So.
And who's online now from the board?
Yeah, I can think so. Essentially, Kim, this is the second session we've held. We'd one on Monday and then today. So we had directors join Monday. And then online right now, we've got Director Leonard Lee, Director Kelly Bax, and then Director Donna McMahon was online a little bit earlier as well.
Thank you.
But I know that other directors were available Monday as well.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Okay, thanks, Kim. I'm going to just put you back into the gallery here. And I've had one more question from Darlene. So Darlene's asking about the number of people we had online on Monday. We had 5 residents online on Monday, Darlene. And today we have 4 online. And just for your information, these sessions have been promoted extensively through the local paper, through social media. We have a banner ad right now on the homepage of the Coast Reporter. As well, an email went out to 70 community groups and organizations on the coast, making them aware last week with a save to date, and then again on today. I sent another note today just reminding folks. So so that's how many we've had join Monday, and then again today. So I'm just going to put a link here in the chat, and that's to our Let's Talk page. Tina mentioned earlier, you can ask a question at any time at all on that page, so feel free to go ahead and to ask one. I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. I hope that answers the last question you had, Darlene. So yeah, you got a little bit, 30 seconds or so. If you got more questions, put them in. And just to wrap up, just to make you aware that these sessions are available on YouTube as soon as we end the session. They're also being posted to our Let's Talk page. So again, that's letstalk.scrd.ca/budget. They'll be up there. Tina's presentation from earlier, if you missed it, will be up there. And then we'll also be putting them out on Facebook tomorrow. So I'm not seeing any more questions or no more hands up. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks, Tina, for your input, and Dean as well. And Tina, round 2 budget February 5th, open meetings, and people are more than welcome to join, and the agendas for that will be out the previous week, right?